spring splits is kind of simple, really. And I'm going to give you a really quick answer on how to do it. Now, if you're brand new to beekeeping, I would encourage you to take one of the Texas Bee Supply courses on splits. We offer several courses every year on how to make splits. It goes into 45 minutes to an hour or more of detail. But in a nutshell, here's how I make a split. I take 3 frames of brood in the springtime. They of varying stages of brood. So some eggs, some larvae, some cat brood. I want 3 frames of brood, 2 frames of honey in each one of my splits. So that's my goal. So what I do is if I'm going to say I've got a double deep hive, so I've got a deep, 2 deep brood boxes, and let's say there's 6 frames of brood total. So there's 2 frames of brood in the top box, and there's 4 frames of brood in the bottom box. And I go through the hive. If I want to requeen the hive, then I'll try to find that old queen and kill her. And then if I don't want to requeen it, then I'll make sure she's in the bottom box. And what I would do next is I would equalize the brood between the two boxes. So I would find that frame that has the queen on it and I would set it aside. And then I would make sure there's 3 frames of brood in the bottom box, 3 frames of brood in the top box, frames of honey on either side of that brood. And then you could have empty frames beyond those 2 frames of honey. And then I would get my queen back in the bottom box. If I want to save her, I would put a queen excluder between that bottom box where the queen is and your second box. And I would let them sit until that evening. And then that evening, I would take that top box off that has 3 frames of brood, 2 frames of honey. I would put it on its own bottom board and I would move it a couple miles away to a new bee yard. And the reason we let that box sit for a while is because the bees need to equalize. You've really disturbed them as you're making that split. You need to give them time to let the bees equalize back up into that second box and between the two boxes. And then, you're going to move that box 2 miles away so that those foragers in that new split don't all try to go back to the old house, a mile or two away, and they won't know where they are and they'll reorient to that new box. Now, a lot of people don't have a bee yard conveniently a couple miles away. So what you can do is you can kind of rearrange the bee yard. You can make sure neither one of those boxes are where it used to be. You can move them both either direction 5 feet, and then the bees often kind of equally go back to those hives. Or you can leave the split in the original position, and you can move that hive with the old queen, 5 or 6 feet away. Yes, some of those foragers are going to drift back to that old location. However, that hive with your old queen in it is going to be a bit stronger because you've got that old queen in it. She's going to keep laying and they're going to be stronger in the long term. The next day, after you've moved that split, you're going to give them some food and put the new queen in the cage in there and let that new queen get chewed out of that cage. And you'll go back about a week later and verify that there are eggs being laid from that new queen. And that's a split. One quick little note is if you do want to requeen, but you just can't find that old queen, what you can do is you can kind of ignore the queen altogether, make your split and separate them, and then wait, go ahead and move them like we discussed. So you have 2 different boxes, wait 3 or 4 days, and then go back and see which split has eggs in it and which split is raising a bunch of queen cells. The one that has a bunch of queen cells in it, that's the one that needs a queen. The one that has a bunch of eggs and larvae in it, now it's a whole lot easier to find that queen in a much smaller hive than that big, huge double deep hive that you had previously. So in a nutshell, that's how to make a split in a couple minutes.